Good morning. Barbara Nell, the Nutrition Education Assistant with Purdue, and I'm here today to talk to you about My Plate, as well as how to use food that you may get from a food pantry or from a food basket that someone has made up for you. So knowing how to use those foods and put them together is sometimes very difficult, and I was given a list, some things that have been in a food pantry, and I'm going to go over those, and then we're going to talk about what I'm making, and then we'll get into the My Plate piece of it. So the first thing is, oftentimes when you get a package or a box of food from a food pantry, because you don't get to pick it yourself, you get things that are just random, and you're looking at it saying, how do I put this all together? So in my basket, I got canned ravioli, I got peanut butter and jelly, canned sliced carrots, spaghetti, red beans and rice mix, 15-ounce traditional pasta sauce, canned sliced peaches, honey nut cereal, cheesy tuna pasta mix, shelf-safe milk, 2 different containers of chicken-flavored ramen noodles, tomato soup, 2 cans of white chicken, canned applesauce, and 2 pudding cups. So that's what I was given to prepare if I was to receive this package. So the recipe today that we're making is 1-pot pasta. And this pasta calls for ground beef or ground turkey. But because I got chicken in my basket, I decided I was going to substitute the chicken for the ground beef or the turkey, and it works fine. So the other thing is, in my recipe, it calls for onion. If you don't have onion and you have onion powder or onion salt, if you use salt, you're going to use less of the onion salt so that it doesn't become too salty. But you could put those in as a substitute. Then it calls for chicken broth, and instead of chicken broth, we're going to just use water, because oftentimes your chicken will take on the flavor of whatever it's cooked with, so you don't have to have that. And if you Google a substitute for chicken broth, water is one of the things that you can use for chicken broth. Tomato paste, Italian seasoning, pepper, and macaroni or pasta. So, and you would, hopefully it is whole grain, but oftentimes in the food pantries you're not going to get whole grain. So what your pasta is what you're going to use. But the tomato paste, I received a pasta sauce, so that's what I'm using also in this recipe. So right there, I used 4 of the items off of my basket. I then also found a couple of other recipes, a canned that I could make. One of them was tomato soup with noodles. So that one I would use my ramen noodles and my tomato soup together. You also could make red beans and rice with a chicken jambalaya. So you could put that in with your chicken jambalaya and use your other can of chicken. So being resourceful and finding recipes that will use these items takes a little bit of work. And I know sometimes it's just as easy to throw it on and just warm it up and eat it the way it is. However, it's not always as nutritious as it could be if you throw it in a pot and put it together. So this recipe, all we have to do is, in a large saucepan, we are going to cook the chicken, and this chicken will not need to be cooked very much because it has been cooked when it was canned. So we're going to put that in, just warm it up a little bit. And I usually, as you guys know, I'm a cook that likes to get it done fast. I won't say I'm a lazy cook, but I'm a let's get it done as fast as we can. So I usually go ahead, since this meat has been cooked, just throw it in and go ahead then, and it's not going to have any fat because it's chicken, where if you'd use turkey or if you'd use beef especially, you would have some draining to do. But with the chicken, you're not going to have anything that needs to drain off of it, or you should have very little. I mean, I'm looking at what's in here, and there's hardly any fat in this chicken. So we're going to go ahead and stir in our broth, which is the water. We are then going to go ahead and put in the tomato pasta sauce. And just just let this start cooking. I like to cook it together a little bit longer. I'm going to put the onions in as well. And then we're going to just let this cook. Once I get it all mixed together, we're just going to let it heat up together. And once it gets good and heated up and is boiling, I'll turn it down to a simmer. And we will slowly add in the noodles. And the thing with this is just about anybody can make this. You saw how simple it was to throw it all in the pan together. This is what it looks like as it's starting to cook up. So it almost looks like a tomato soup, but you're going to put that noodles in and it's all going to come together. And if you want to put a little bit of cheese on it, you could. You could also serve it with applesauce, is what I would plan to serve, so I would use that out of my bucket also. So knowing that you have a basket and it's random foods, I like to look and see what goes together so that I can put together a one-pan dish, or I can make a casserole. One of my gals the other day, one of my other students told me that she got scalloped potatoes and chicken and some tomatoes, and she said, I just put it all together in a casserole dish, and I had just a great casserole for dinner. I had enough so I could invite my neighbor over, and she said it was something different that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So a one-pot meal is always good if you're in a hurry. It's also good to use odds and ends of what you have in your pantry. You can also throw in a little extra Italian seasoning or salt or pepper if you want, but that's to taste. It really, your pasta sauce should have enough Italian seasoning in it. If it doesn't, you can always add a little bit more in. So with that, we look at this and we talk about My Plate. And My Plate is a simple revision of the food pyramid from years ago. And what it basically looks like is half of our plate is fruits and vegetables, and half of our plate is grains and protein, and then we have dairy. And when we're looking at building a healthy plate, we want to say, does my plate look like this at most of my meals? If it doesn't, then what can I do to change it? So in this meal that I just put together in this pot, we have our protein. We're going to have grains, okay? We've got a little bit of vegetable with the onion and the tomato, and we're just missing the dairy and the fruit, okay? These two right here. So not bad for your plate, because oftentimes we get our fruit when we have snacks. Also with vegetables, oftentimes in the afternoon, we'll take a snack and we'll have celery and carrots, or we'll have broccoli and something. I know my grandkids love it with a little bit of ranch dressing. So that's these two are easy. If you pick up an apple and you peel it, it's an easy one to have as a snack. Dairy we often get from yogurt or cottage cheese. So this one doesn't have to just be milk, but it needs to be a dairy product. And need to try to stay away from the dairy that is, say, a lot of times I'll hear, well, I just eat cheese. That's okay, but that's not how we should get all of our dairy because of the amount of fat that we have in cheese. So this plate is what I look at and I talk about it, and I say, does my plate look like this? So it's an easy way to look at it as compared to the old pyramid that we tried to figure out if we had so much of each one. So when we're looking at this, vegetables, we should have 2.5 cups a day. Fruit, we should have 2 cups a day. Protein, we should have 5 to 6 ounces a day. Grains, 5 ounces, and then dairy, 3 servings or 3 cups a day. So easy to remember, it's 2s and 3s, and then your 5 and 6 ounces. The important thing here is that at least half of your grains should be coming from whole wheat grain or whole grains. So a whole grain is wheat, if it's whole wheat. Oats are rye, those are grains that are whole. So those you want to have as opposed to having the unbleached white flour. That is not a whole grain because it's been processed. Protein, you want to try to have as much lean protein as you can. A lean protein is going to be turkey, it's going to be chicken, it's going to be fish, okay? A lot of times someone will say, well, I think pork is a lean protein. They oftentimes announce that it's a white protein, which it is when you cook it, but it's not lean. It still has fat. And I always just remind myself, pork gives us bacon, so we know it has to have, all the things that come from pork has to have some kind of fat in it. Beef, if you're using ground beef, you want to try to get the 85% lean. If you do not get the beef that is 85% lean, you can always brown your beef and then take it out, and I lay it on the counter on a piece of paper, a couple pieces of paper towel on my cutting board, and I pat it real good. And if it still has a lot of, if it's 70% or less, I will put it in my strainer, and I will put very, very hot water on it and drain that fat off while it's still in the liquid form, so that then I will pat it again so that I've got as much of the fat out as I possibly can. So there are ways to use ground beef that is not 80% or 85% lean if you use it with taking precautions to process it before you actually eat it. So when we look at making our plate look like this, sometimes we challenge ourselves in getting enough fruits and vegetables, and that is because we have learned to eat fruits and vegetables in their fresh state. And as you notice on my list in my pantry basket, I got no fresh fruits or vegetables. I got everything that was canned, or I might have got something that was frozen. Those are great resources also. You just have to be careful. If you're using canned carrots, you want to look at the container and see how much sodium is in it, because when we can things, we put salt in it or sodium in it to stabilize it. And if that's the case and it has a large amount of sodium, then all you have to do is wash that can of carrots off, put them in a strainer and wash them off so that you get the juice that they're canned in off, and that gets rid of a lot of the sodium. The same thing if you bought fruit that is canned and it's in a heavy syrup, you want to put that in a strainer and wash it off. And if you save the juice, you can always put some water with it, and that way then the water will liquefy or break down the sugars that's in that syrup. And by doing that, you're not drinking as much. If you were going to give that juice to your child, you're not giving them just straight sugar water. The other thing is oftentimes when we buy canned fruit, it will have be in pear juice. And I'm not 100% sure why they use pear juice a lot, but we do see pear juice in a lot of our cans of fruit that we buy. It's okay, there's nothing wrong with it, it's just that that's the fruits that they have used to can with. So knowing those things and knowing that your plate should be half fruits and vegetables. The other piece of it is if you do go to the pantry and you pick up fresh fruits and vegetables, you want to know how to store them. You want to know how to have them last as long as you possibly can. And there is on our website for Purdue Extension, Eat, Gather, and Go, and it gives you a lot of tips on how to store and how to make that produce last longer. I oftentimes, if I know I'm not going to use something, I'll cook it and then I'll freeze it so that it's safe to eat later down the road, especially corn or beans. I will do something like that so that I know that I'm not going to lose them. Apples, if I know that an apple is starting to go bad, I'll look at the whole batch, and oftentimes I will just peel them, pour them, and throw them in a pan about this size with a little bit of water, and I will let them cook for about an hour and with a lid on them so the steam is building up, and I make applesauce. So it's a great way to not let a fruit or vegetable go bad if you process it a little bit so it goes into something else. So we love for you to get fruits and vegetables at the pantries. However, this time of year it's a little slim pickings because we don't get as much fruit and vegetables as we do in the summertime. The other thing is in the area we have several gardens that you can go and work in the garden, and you can pick up fruits and vegetables from that garden after you have worked in the garden. So they're community gardens, they're throughout Lafayette, so it's a great way to pick up some fresh fruits and vegetables. The other thing is if you are on SNAP dollars, your SNAP dollars can be used to go to farmers market, that they will convert those into dollars to use at the farmer's market to get fruits and vegetables. So it's a great way to get fruits and vegetables that you might not have had otherwise. And I know that many times there are different ways to get some additional dollars to get your fruits and vegetables because pantries don't have them as often. So I always tell my SNAP people that look at what you're getting from the food pantry before you go to use your SNAP dollars, so that if you need this recipe and you needed to pick something up, you've got your SNAP dollars to do that. Or fruits and vegetables are one that I really encourage people to take and use for their SNAP dollars, as opposed to thinking they're going to get everything at the food pantry. Protein, as we talked about, is just when we cook it, is the next piece of it that we can help to keep it a little bit healthier. So if we grill it, if we poach it, if we bake it, we're going to have a better quality piece of meat as opposed to if we fry it. So if you're making hamburgers and you can grill them some way, or you can do something other than just putting them in a skillet and letting all that grease cook together, that is truly a better way to fix that ground beef. The other thing, ground beef oftentimes is my go-to to add into something like this one pot pasta, or to put it into lasagna, or any multitude of casseroles that I make that I will put ground beef in. Or making a meatloaf is a great way to use your ground beef. Making sure that we cut back on foods that are high in solid fats, added sugars, and salt. And our labels today tell us that what is added sugars, and those are sugars that are just added to make it taste better. Sugars come in fruits and vegetables, and with that, those are good sugars, but oftentimes we'll see something being prepared and they will have added sugar to let's say a strawberry parfait or something. And with that, do you need that extra sugar from what they've added, or can you just have the strawberries by themselves? So the less we eat sugar, the better our body is, because we begin to not notice the sweetness in fruits and vegetables that are actually there if we've gotten used to having so much sugar in our diet. Also, added sugars are oftentimes in our soft drinks, and that's where we pick up a lot of our calories, is when we drink soft drinks. So understanding what soft drinks do to our diet is something that oftentimes you didn't see that on our plate, and we oftentimes pick up that soft drink and say, well, it's a great value, but the value that you have from that soft drink kind of loses its value when you look at how much it could hurt your body. The other one is solid fats. An easy way to remember a good fat is if it's in the liquid form. If it's in a solid form, it's going to turn right back into a solid form when it goes into your body, so it's going to make your arteries that much thicker with fat in them. So you want to try to avoid as many foods that have solid fats in them. So if you're looking at having a solid fat, let's say a piece of pork that has fat on it, or bacon that started out solid, that is going to turn back into solid fat when it gets into your body. So I know we have this huge craze of bacon right now, of everything's being made with bacon. We just want to make sure that we don't have a lot of bacon, because it does have a lot of fats in it. The other piece of it is that we need to drink water. We need to drink at least 8 cups of water a day. And knowing that we have to have 8 cups of water a day, it's easiest if you just start out with a container and fill it, and know that you're going to fill it up every so many hours. If you stopped and got a big gulp at the grocery store, that's a great cup to keep. To fill it up with ice, and just keep filling it up with water, because that water is going to help your body process. And it's just, our body is made up of a lot of water, so we want to keep water in so we're not dehydrated. And the last piece of it is to switch to skim milk from whole milk. And knowing that we are switching to skim milk is sometimes very hard for people, because they've gotten so used to having whole milk. And the reason we switch to skim milk is because of the fat that comes from a cow's milk. I know there's a lot of questions that if I were here in person with you, you'd be asking me about almond milk and oat milk and all of those milks, and they all have value, but cow's milk is really one of the best milks that we can have. But we want to make sure that we're doing skim or 1% milk. And my trick to getting people to change from drinking whole milk is to switch to half whole milk and half 2%, and then go from 2% to 1%, and then 1% to skim. If you can't do that, and if you have children, I highly recommend that you continue to give them whole milk until they're about 12 years old. So if you have children, you're going to be drinking whole milk longer than maybe you would want to, but they need that extra vitamins and that comes from whole milk. And the last piece of my plate that's not on here is making sure that we're active, making sure that we are doing some kind of exercise for at least 30 minutes a day. And that means getting our heart elevated high enough that it has to slow back down after we've done that 30 minutes of exercise. If we don't get our heart rate elevated, then our metabolism doesn't set in and doesn't work as hard as well as it could. So knowing that and knowing how to get 30 minutes of exercise, I know a lot of parents say, I get my 30 minutes just following my kids around, but my question always is, or I took my dog out for a walk, my question always is, did your heart rate, was it elevated, or was it just the same as if I was standing here talking to you? And if it was just the same, then it probably didn't get elevated enough to get your metabolism going the way it was supposed to. So knowing those things, knowing to have whole grain breads, to have skim or 1% milk, to have a lot of fruits and vegetables, and it's okay to eat canned or frozen. I preferably like frozen better than canned, but some people it's the opposite, so it's really to your preference. It's making sure that we eat the right amount of calories. And knowing your calories, oftentimes the USDA bases everything on 2,000 calories for a woman and 2,500 for a man. Oftentimes that is too many calories for someone that doesn't move a lot and have a lot of exercise or is aging. So you want to make sure you understand your calories. And if you have a cell phone or a smartphone, there's an app, it's called Lose It, it's free. There's also the USDA app that you can track everything that you've eaten for the day, and it tells you, on either one of these, it tells you how many calories, how many carbohydrates, how many proteins, how much fat. So it's a great way if you really are trying to just watch your diet and to maintain or to lose weight. Those are two great ways to use those two apps to be able to eat healthy, make your plate look like my plate looks like on a regular basis, and still be satisfied. And still use everything that came in your little packet when you went to the food pantry. So knowing how to balance all of this is hard. It's also important to know how to plan and to prepare when you get some of the odd things that maybe you get in your food pantry box, how to make it go the furthest for your family, and how to make it as nutritional as you possibly can make it. So with all of that, if there is interest, I teach virtual classes through Zoom, 2 to 3, up to 5 times a week at various times. You can pick up my virtual classes through Food Finders, or you can just email me at bnorig@purdue.edu, and we can get you set up with some virtual classes to learn how to plan, how to delve into the fruits, the vegetables, the proteins, and understand them more, as well as exercise. So it's a great way. It's a free service. It's something that can help your family have a healthier lifestyle. So now back to the important part of what I've been making and stirring here while I was talking. This is almost done. Hopefully you're going to be able to see it. But this is what it looks like as it's finished. It is a great, easy recipe. This would easily, I made a half a recipe. So this easily is going to feed 3 to 4 people. So a whole recipe is going to easily feed 6 people. Sometimes if I make something like this, I might go one step further, throw it into a baking dish, and put maybe a little bit of breadcrumbs or crumbled cheese and breadcrumbs on the top, and just bake it for a few minutes and have a baked spaghetti meal as opposed to just the one pot. It depends on how much time I have. Also, sometimes we'll throw peas in this or throw some spinach in with it. So it's really how you want vegetables in that you like. There's no reason that you couldn't put some vegetables in this. And those carrots that we got, if we weren't going to use them in another recipe, we can throw those in here. I also oftentimes, if you have a chance to pick up a butternut squash or any kind of squash, I oftentimes will take those and prepare them and throw them in something like this. They'll cook down, and they will take the flavor of the tomatoes, but they will give you more nutrition as far as a vegetable in your dish. So lots of ways to make your meals healthier. It just takes a little bit of time and a little bit of planning. And that's truly, anything in life takes a little bit more time if it's going to be really good. So I would just encourage all of you to try some of these one-pot dishes. They're also, the recipe will be on Food Finder's site. But also if you go to Eat, Gather, and Go, just write Eat, Gather, and Go into your server, and it will pop up and it'll say Purdue on it. And you can find all kinds of healthy recipes that really work well with things that you can get from food pantries. There's also, I believe it's Feed America has a site that you can pick up recipes for things that you might get at a food pantry. So just want everyone to know that we can eat healthy. It just takes a little bit of time and a little bit of patience and a lot of coaxing our kids to like these things if they've not been exposed to them. So I wish you all well, and hopefully you will get to try this recipe.